Yeah, I think so. But again, you never know. I mean, we're working really hard to get that done. I think it's really important for us. At the same time, you know, the thing that I have confidence in is that we both want the same thing, right? We want Jordan here for a long time, give him that stability for him, and it gives us some stability for our group as well. So, you know, Russ is doing a great, a great job with, you know, David Mulugeta and their team. Got two people who are very experienced with this, so I'm optimistic. These are big deals. It takes time. They're not as you know, easy as some people may think.
All right, when we have big news in the NFL, it does require the full squad here. We have Charles Davis, Douzable joining us here on set to talk about it. Also, just to be clear, Jordan Love is in the building. He's just not going to be practicing until that deal gets done. Lige, I will start with you. It feels like this is just the next domino that we've been kind of expecting to fall in terms of quarterbacks and deals and consistency. And, you know, that's what happens when we have these franchise quarterbacks. They're just waiting to get paid.
Yeah, and smart job by Jordan Love deciding to actually hold in, because we know if you're not there, you're going to get fined. And we'll see in the next coming days how many players that are looking for new contracts actually hold out. But this was coming down the pipe, and it was interesting because if you remember halfway through the season, the GM for the Packers, Brian Gutekunst, came out and said these last 8 or 9 games for Jordan Love were very important. And CD, that's a GM sending a message without sending a message. And what Jordan Love did was play the best quarterback that he played all last year. I mean, I don't think there was anybody better those last 8 games of the season. He went 6-2 in that span, 18 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Literally dissected the Dallas Cowboys in the wild card round and was just 1 or 2 throws away from upsetting the San Francisco 49ers in the divisional round and going to the Super Bowl. So when you saw the confidence, I don't think anybody CD played with better confidence than Jordan Love those last 8 games of the season. This deal will get done. It's good that he's in the building, and it looks like it's amicable. But I think the thing that actually could hurt this negotiation was a deal that just got done not too long ago, Trevor Lawrence, right? And him getting around $55 million. So if you're Jordan Love and you look at what Trevor Lawrence has done, in your 1 year, you got as many playoff wins as him, and the trajectory looks a little bit better. I wonder if that has some bearing on why this deal maybe hasn't gotten done yet, CD.
Well, I think it's great eyes by you and a great thought process about what David Mulugeta and his crew are saying and talking about with the Packers and, of course, with Jordan Love. And, you know, if you're David Mulugeta client, you remember Karen in Goodfellas when she asked for money to go shopping and he handed her the stack and she thought, bigger stack? That's where David Mulugeta is right now. Bigger stack. All right, let's go for this thing. But I think you all pointed out very accurately, it's a hold in. And this is a Packers group. And you notice how relaxed Brian Gutekunst was talking about this? Both sides need each other. Big-time draft pick that no one wanted. Remember that one? That's what Jordan Love was. Patiently had to wait during that time. Got his opportunity. Last 10 games, 23-3, and as Lige pointed out so accurately, was nails in the playoffs. This is going to get done. It's a matter of the number. And as you pointed out, Trevor Lawrence put a pretty good number up there. Let's see where it ends up settling. I have zero doubt in my mind that this is going to get done, and probably sooner rather than later. I don't see this being prolonged because both sides kind of need each other, and Jordan Love's waited a long time to be in this spot.
From the offensive side of the ball to the defensive side of the ball for the Packers, they signed Kenny Clark, the Pro Bowl defensive tackle, to a 3-year extension, $64 million, $29 million set to be made this year. He's already one of the best run stoppers in the game, and from one DT to another, Lige, they're switching to a 4-3 base. Could he get even better this season?
Jeremy, I love that you brought up that point because there's been a philosophy change. Remember, Jim Barry was the defensive coordinator. Now Jeff Hafley comes in, and they have an attacking style defense, which really highlights Kenny Clark's skill set. He's coming off a career year where he had 7.5 sacks. Jeremy, I think he can get even better with this new system as well. And the thing, it would also help Rashawn Gary on the outside, Preston Smith, because once quarterbacks try to step up in the pocket, now you got a Kenny Clark that's pinning his ears back. To me, he's been one of the most unappreciated players in the NFL, does a lot of the dirty and grunt work. Like you said, they were in that 3-4, had to stay in there on those double teams. Now he's in that 4-3 system. He can get on the edge of that guard and really go create havoc in the backfield, not only in the run game, but in the pass game. So I do think this philosophy change, we'll see an even better Kenny Clark. And the crazy thing is, I believe this is his 8th or 9th year. He's only 28 years old, so he's still relatively young. Still has a lot of football left in him.
Yeah, he was the Doogie Howser of the NFL coming out. He's 20 years old. He hit the NFL, okay? So he hit it early. He's going to get an extra contract if he continues to go along with his career, more so than most guys will get in their tenure. Great points about everything going. Don't forget the guys inside, because it behooves them inside to help him out as well. Devontae Wyatt, is he going to make that jump here the next year after being a first-round pick from Georgia? TJ Slayton, Carl Brooks, all those guys will help Kenny Clark be better as well, because Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Preston Smith, they love having him in there because that helps them on the edge, and he eats up a lot of blockers. Now he's going to need those other guys to eat up people inside to give him a chance to top those 7.5 sacks. Plus, he's a pillar of that locker room, a pillar of that team, a 3-time Pro Bowler. Yeah, he's going to enjoy working under Jeff Hafley. Not that he didn't enjoy working under Joe Barry, but it is a different style, as you so accurately pointed out.
So we've run down deals that have gotten done with Green Bay, deals that we're still waiting for. But if we look at the NFL, there are some big names out there that have the potential for a holdout. When you think of Brandon Aiyuk, Hassan Reddick, CeeDee Lamb. Charles, I'll send it back to you. When you're looking at this list or any other names that might pop in your head, what is the most intriguing potential holdout situation in your eyes?
Well, I think I'll just start right at the top. I know Brandon Aiyuk's been getting a lot of attention here, but CeeDee Lamb, because I'm going to show my age a little bit. And I remember when Emmitt Smith held out for the Cowboys, and they decided to take the firm stance with him, and they lost their first 2 games of the season. Charles Haley pinwheeled his helmet in the locker room that almost took out Jerry Jones and put a big dent in a locker room after their second loss. Get him signed. Emmitt was in camp within hours, and the Cowboys won another Super Bowl. Normally, you don't start 0-2 and get it done, but they needed him. Now, is CeeDee Lamb Emmitt Smith? In a sense, he is with this ball club because he opens things up for everyone else. He makes everything work. He gives them an identity on offense. That's the most intriguing one because the Cowboys say they're optimistic getting it done. I think CeeDee Lamb's really going to hold their feet to the fire on this one. I expect him to play for them with the season opener, but I think there'll be a few bumps along the way getting this contract done.
CD, I'm going to go on the opposite side of the ball. Surprise, right? Defensive lineman, talking about a defensive lineman. Hassan Reddick. I mean, this is an interesting one because the Jets traded for this guy right around the draft time, right? And they knew he needed a new deal. Supposedly, there are rumors out there that they talked to him and told him that they would maybe consider a deal after this season. And supposedly, he was on board with that. Well, he didn't show up to all offseason, didn't show up to minicamp. And he actually has a little bit of leverage. CD, when a player decides not to use his services, that's the leverage that a player has, right? Because he's technically under contract for 1 more year. But the Jets traded away another good player in John Franklin Myers. So when you look at the depth at the edge position group, it's not as strong without Hassan Reddick. So Hassan Reddick is probably looking at this defensive line and saying, well, without me, they're going to really struggle on the outside because Jermaine Johnson had a heck of a year last year, was a Pro Bowler. Will McDonald didn't play that much. He's a former first-round pick. But then you look past that, there isn't much depth at the edge position. And if you know anything about Jeff Ulbrich and Robert Saleh's defense, it's built off the defensive line. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Hassan Reddick. I know he was in Japan doing some cosplaying instead of being with the Jets this offseason, but they ultimately need him for this championship-type defense to play to the level that they play because he is a closer, one of the best edge rushers in the NFL, not only getting to the quarterback, but getting the ball off the quarterback. So that's a real intriguing one to look at as the Jets get ready to open up camp this week.
Another name we saw on that list, Brandon Aiyuk, who's, of course, been making headlines all offseason. Recently on Ryan Clark's podcast, he was asked, hey, if you're not in the Niners uniform next year, what uniform do you think you're going to be at now? Jaden Daniels was in the room, his former college teammate, so he said maybe the Commanders. He also said the Steelers. But, Charles, I'll ask you here, Brandon Aiyuk, if the Niners decide to ship him out, where do you think would be the best fit for him?
I think staying in the Golden State and going to the Los Angeles Chargers. Because you remember the Chargers, they were loaded, as we all know, at wide receiver for years. Okay? Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, right? Josh Palmer, who was still there. But they always had those guys who could go get the football. Justin Herbert, a big arm guy. And now they don't have the same dash outside. All right, they drafted the youngster out of Ladd McConkey out of Georgia. But he's a slot receiver, okay? They spent capital on the offensive line, which was rightly so because they needed to shore that up. Now you've got the 2 tackles in Slater and Joe Alt, who they drafted this year. but you want to ring that bell throwing the football. Brandon Aiyuk does that for you, and you've got a quarterback who can do it, who I think is going to get better with an increased emphasis on the run game with the Chargers. Can you imagine throwing off the play action and hitting Aiyuk downfield on those dagger throws? Oh, it'd be just like they're doing in San Francisco. Wouldn't be a whole lot of change for Brandon Aiyuk other than a change of address. To me, the Chargers make a lot of sense for Brandon Aiyuk. The interesting part is, how could they get it done, because they are cap strapped for this year.
CD, man, I guess you were looking at my sheet at home and decided to put the – because that was my sneaky team.
Listen, I went to an SEC school. If you didn't guard your work, you didn't guard your work, that meant it was open season. And my peripheral vision is really 2020.
So I love that. I put 3 teams down. The Commanders make too much sense, obviously. Jaden Daniels and that connection going back to Arizona State. I think the Bills make a lot of sense, too, because when you look at their roster, the way it's currently constructed, only one receiver, Khalil Shakir, has actually caught in passes from Josh Allen. So I think they still need a true number one. But I love that we're thinking alike with the Chargers. I mean, I don't think anybody has put that team out there because of everything you just said, CD. We know that they really beefed up the offensive line. We know Jim Harbaugh really loves to run the football. Just imagine, like you said, the play action pass, those daggers, those in-breaking routes. If you look at Brandon Aiyuk, he is the number one receiver for the San Francisco 49ers. When you look at the concepts that they run, everything that's timing-based, it goes to him. It doesn't go to Deebo Samuel. So just imagine them running the football effectively and Brandon Aiyuk tearing up the middle of the field. They need a true number one receiver. You talked about Ladd McConkey. He's more of a slot guy. Took Quentin Jefferson, has struggled to come and acclimate to the NFL game. Josh Palmer is more of a burner on the outside. Brandon Aiyuk makes too much sense to the LA Chargers.
I mean, maybe you guys were just on the same wavelength.
We might have been.
No cheating involved. We don't have to, throw digs at the SEC, CD.
I have to admit, I'm a little bit hurt by the insinuation that I'm not doing my own work.
Of course you're doing your work. I just had to give you a hard time, CD, because literally, I was like, that's my sleeper team. Nobody said it yet.
I'll find a way to get past it. But the insinuation, that was that little veiled discussion there, we'll work through it.
We'll work through it, CD.
He's been doing his work. He made a Goodfellas reference and a Doogie Howser reference. Come on, the dude's doing his homework.
Yeah, you guys were just on the same wavelength, and you didn't know it. Parallel thought process here. Certainly, what a difference a year makes in terms of Chris Jones, because there's very different vibes coming from Chris Jones from Chiefs camp right now. I guess that's what happens when you get a whole lot of money in your pocket. It makes a difference. We have some fun quotes from him, because he's always, down for a good laugh. In the first part of it, he talks about, hey, I think chasing history is all part of it in terms of the 3-peat with Kansas City. He goes on to say it would be a huge accomplishment, not only for us, but for the NFL. No team has ever 3-peated. But then he goes on to say, listen, man, I just hope that Coach Reid feels it in his heart to understand that 30 hits different. Yes, I feel that, Chris Jones, but I just hope that Reid finds it in his amazing heart to give me a day or two off coming up. Alijay's here shaking his head at this day or two off, because, man, I know you're 30 and it takes a little bit of extra effort to get your body moving when you pass that 30 threshold. But come on, dude, you just got paid. And Andy Reid, I mean, you were saying it before, he's not going to give you a day off.
Oh, no. Andy Reid runs one of the toughest camps, and then we'll double down on that, because me and CD were just talking about this off camera. Joe Cullen, his defensive line coach, is definitely not giving any time off. I played for Joe for 2 years in Jacksonville. He gave me 1 day, and it was because I was coming off a groin injury, right, where I could barely even run. That was the only reason why he gave me that day off. So the Kansas City Chiefs are one of the toughest training camp places in regards to the NFL as far as the way Andy Reid and Joe Cullen and the rest of that team runs their program. And it's great that they were able to get Chris Jones done, because you talked about it, Jacqueline. That was a big emphasis for them last year. He ended up missing the first game, and they lose to the Detroit Lions. But this year he comes in with the right mindset. And if you look at this team, it was based off their defense last year. Now, I know we got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid on the other side, but this was a top 5 defense last year, and this team was led by his defense. And Chris Jones is a game wrecker. He is the #1 defensive tackle in football. And you're seeing some of these stats right here. What I really like on some of these clips is you see the versatility of Chris Jones, right? He doesn't just line up inside CD at defensive tackle. We see him on the edge. You see him right there beat Mekhi Becton. We saw it 2 years ago in the AFC Championship with the game on the line. He was rushing at end to get Joe Burrow and get a sack. to give the ball back to Patrick Mahomes for them to win that game. And then the most important play in the Super Bowl last year, Brock Purdy had Jawan Jennings open in the end zone. But because of Chris Jones and his penetration up the middle, he calls an errant throw, and the San Francisco 49ers were not able to get that touchdown, had to settle for a field goal. Mahomes goes down and wins the Super Bowl. So his impact on the game is just ridiculous. I didn't even talk about the players that he plays with that get the one-on-one opportunities, like Mike Dana, George Karlaftis, Charles Omenihu, who all had career years last year, due in part because Chris Jones is on that defensive line.
And they're hoping FAU comes along. Felix Anudike-Uzomah, who was a first-round pick for them last year. Hope that he is able to get that done for them as well. But all that you said so eloquently expressed, so perfect. But here's the other part, too. Let's start with the day off. Andy Reid was in that stadium, and they hoisted the flag, and he looked up, and he saw his number one defensive player sitting in a box having hot dogs. No day off now. You should have been down here in Detroit, okay? Instead of that, that's not going to work. You brought up the other guys that he makes better. And the other part I come back to is a couple of years ago, he was intent on playing full-time defensive end, wanted to protect his knees, thought it would help his longevity as a player. He's not a full-time defensive end to be the player that he wants to be the Hall of Fame game wrecker. Inside is where it works for him. Does he have versatility in passing down sub packages to go all up and down the line of scrimmage, playing the piano and finding the matchup? Yes, absolutely. But when Kansas City's at its best, he has to be inside in those early downs to help slow down teams who want to try and do things in the interior. And he figured that part out. Legacy, he talks about three-peat. You know what the other legacy is? You want to be a Hall of Famer? Defensive tackle. You want to be a really good player? Full-time defensive end. He figured it out, and he figured it out in a big way. But no, that day off, that went out the window when he was up in the box while they were struggling with Detroit.
Yeah, hopefully that hot dog in the box, he wasn't thinking, hey, I'm going to be 30 soon when he's chilling up there in the box. Charles Davis, Lige Douzable, we appreciated having fun with you guys here. And, of course, as we are counting down to the NFL, you can watch the season starting on September 8th for the NFL on CBS, that is. And, of course, you can stream all the action on Paramount Plus as well.